Every year, one game snags the crown of Game of the Year. But let's be real, sometimes the games that don't win are the ones that stay with us forever. Today, we're diving into 15 legendary titles that absolutely deserve the Game of the Year title, but got robbed. Let's get into it. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor dropped in 2014 and did something that no one expected, made orcs interesting. Before this, they were just green dudes you mindlessly sliced in every fantasy game. But Mordor said, hey, what if that one orc you accidentally set on fire comes back with a burned face and a personal vendetta? Suddenly, every fight felt like a high school reunion with people you hate. The Nemesis system was so ahead of its time that even 10 years later, most developers still haven't figured out how to steal it properly. But despite revolutionizing open-world combat and making orc HR departments a necessity, it got passed over for Game of the Year in favor of Dragon Age Inquisition, aka let's talk politics for 60 hours with a sword in the background. Mordor didn't win because it wasn't a BioWare game or a big narrative epic. It was just an absolute banger with zero chill and 10 times the fun. Justice for Ratbag. Bloodborne is what happens when someone at From Software says, what if Dark Souls, but everyone has rabies and Victorian fashion sense? It's moody, bloody, and so difficult it makes you question every life choice that brought you to this moment. The game doesn't hold your hand, it throws you into the deep end of a plague-ridden nightmare and says, figure it out, nerd. And you do, because somewhere between getting crushed by a giant pig and getting mauled by a man in a top hat, something clicks. Then you start talking about frame data and iframes like you're in a fight club. But despite all that brilliance, in 2015, the Game of the Year went to The Witcher 3, which was basically Geralt's dating simulator with side quests. Sure, The Witcher had more dialogue options, but Bloodborne had a guy made out of snakes, a boss fight against a celestial being, and a city full of nightmare fuel. It didn't win because the judges probably got stuck at Father Gascoigne and rage quit. Titanfall 2 was like that kid in school who was insanely talented, but got completely ignored because they showed up late and sat behind the tall kid. This game had parkour, time travel, a sentient robot that said, I'm sorry, better than most humans, and a campaign so unexpectedly emotional that I ended up crying over a mech, a robot, with feelings. Meanwhile, multiplayer was so fluid and chaotic it felt like Mario Kart on rocket skates. But thanks to EA's genius marketing decision to release it between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty, Infinite Warfare, Titanfall 2 went out like a whisper in a hurricane. It deserved Game of the Year in 2016, but instead we handed it to Overwatch because we were all still in our team-based shooter with animated shorts honeymoon phase. Titanfall 2 had it all. Creativity, momentum, and a robot who would 100% write you a better birthday card than your own family, and yet it got nothing. BT deserved better. Uncharted 4 was like that final Fast and Furious movie where everyone's older, wiser, and somehow more emotionally damaged, but still good at blowing stuff up in gorgeous locations. Nathan Drake returned for one last treasure hunt and somehow managed to parkour, shoot, and wisecrack his way through the most beautiful game the PS4 had ever seen. The game could have been a travel documentary if the camera would just stop shaking from all the gunfire. Between the sibling drama, pirate history lessons, and grappling hook physics that ignored all known laws of motion, it was the perfect farewell. But in 2016, the Game of the Year went to Overwatch. So a multiplayer shooter where a hamster pilots a murder ball got the crown while Nate was left holding some pirate coin wondering what went wrong. Uncharted 4 didn't win because it was a complete game. No loot boxes, no updates, no roadmaps. Just a beautifully wrapped ending. And apparently, that's not trendy enough. Christ. Horizon Zero Dawn is the tale of Aloy, an outcast turned robot dinosaur hunter with the kind of backstory that makes Greek tragedies look like bedtime stories. This game gave us a post-apocalyptic world that somehow looked better than most pre-apocalyptic ones, complete with robo-wildlife, tribal politics, and a sci-fi plot so complicated you need a PowerPoint just to explain it to your dog. And the combat? Chef's kiss. You're not just fighting machines, you're dismantling them like a post-apocalyptic IKEA set. But unfortunately, HZD launched in the same month as Breath of the Wild, aka the game that made every open-world dev rethink their life. While Aloy was out here crafting traps and scanning enemies, Link was rolling down hills in his underwear cooking apples. Critics went feral. Horizon lost the Game of the Year, not because it lacked quality, but because it lacked a glider and a guy named Ganon. Which is wild, because Aloy was out there saving the entire planet from extinction with a spear and some leftover tech, and she still got side-eyed like she was just the warm-up act. Control is what happens when someone eats an SCP wiki and washes it down with a David Lynch movie. You play as Jessie Faden, a woman who walks into a cursed government building and immediately gets promoted to boss because apparently in this universe, management roles are handed out like cursed artifacts. The game is about throwing desks at people using psychic powers while navigating a brutalist office building that shifts more than your schedule during flu season. There are janitors who speak in riddles, rubber duckies that teleport, and a fridge that kills you if you blink. It's like working in IT, but the demons are literal. Control was sleek, weird, and stylish as hell. But in 2019, the Game of the Year went to Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Which, fair. But, come on, Control deserved some kind of award for making paperwork scary. Instead, Jessie spent the whole game cleaning up messes with a magic gun and got rewarded with runner-up Weird Girl. Meanwhile, the fridge is still judging us. Final Fantasy VII Remake took one of the most beloved JRPGs of all time and said, what if we added 30 hours of side quests, a fashion show, and made the combat system 3 games deep? And somehow it worked. The remake turned Cloud into a conflicted emo beefcake, made Tifa bench press the internet's attention span, and introduced Sephiroth to a whole new generation of trauma victims. Then came Rebirth, which basically said, oh, you liked that? Here's a cosmic migraine. You're exploring the open world, fighting godlike summons, breeding chocobos like a mad poultry scientist, and just when it all makes sense, bam! Multiverse Crisis. It's the most stylish identity crisis ever coded. But no Game of the Year? Nope. It's as if Square Enix said, we're rewriting gaming history, and the judges responded, cute, but we already gave it to a game with a grappling hook and a sad horse? Aerith died again for this. And you're telling me a zombie game beat that? Rude.
Anytime now.
Get him!
Come on. You can drown with me.
I'm coming!
I won't.
Ghost of Tsushima is a samurai epic that looks like a Kurosawa film had a baby with an Instagram filter. You play as Jin Sakai, a man so committed to honor that even his horse gets emotional backstory. The game lets you duel on flower-covered cliffs, slice bamboo for XP, and write haikus mid-battle like you're submitting poetry while committing murder. And let's talk about that wind mechanic. No map markers, just wind. It's like your GPS is a soft-spoken forest spirit. Everything about this game screams Game of the Year, but in 2020, it went to The Last of Us Part 2, which again, fair unless you wanted to have fun and not cry for 30 hours straight. Ghost gave us beauty, stealth, combat, and a fox petting simulator. Meanwhile, Joel was out here getting golf clubbed. Jin deserved that trophy. He liberated an entire island with nothing but a sword and a growing list of emotional damage, and still got snubbed harder than a Ronin at a Shogun's birthday party. A Plague Tale Requiem is like if Pixar made a horror movie and every scene was 40% rats. Amicia and Hugo return with even more trauma, more sibling bonding, and approximately 8 billion more rodents. The stealth gameplay involves dodging soldiers, sneaking through corpses, and solving puzzles while your brother occasionally whispers something like, "I feel the rats, sister." And you just go, "Yeah, that checks out." The story punches you in the feelings repeatedly, with emotional stakes so high it's like someone spliced a drama series into a survival horror game. And sure, the combat wasn't exactly God of War, but when you can weaponize vermin and weaponize tears in the same cutscene, that's art. But in 2022, Game of the Year went to Elden Ring, which was basically open world, but you die. A Plague Tale was ignored because it didn't have 14 builds, 9 swords, and an NPC that moans cryptically. It had heart and rats. So many rats. Honestly, it deserved the award just for not making us uninstall out of fear.
It's over now.
We did it, Hugo.
Yes. Breathe. Calm down now. Let's free Arno, right?
Yes. Please.
God of War Ragnarok is what happens when you take the world's grumpiest dad, add Norse apocalypse, and throw in every mythological therapy session imaginable. Kratos is back, still built like a refrigerator, but now with emotional nuance and parenting issues. Atreus is older, snarkier, and fluent in teenager with destiny. The game delivers epic fights, boss battles that feel like cinematic blockbusters, and side quests where you literally rescue jellyfish for lore points. It's the kind of game where you're sobbing over a god's death one minute and smashing through a wall with a talking squirrel the next. But once again, Elden Ring ate its lunch in 2022. I get it, FromSoft made an open world that gives you PTSD flashbacks, but Ragnarok had depth, drama, and a Thor who looked like he drank protein shakes made of thunder. Kratos literally tried to not kill people for a change, and we punished him for it. Moral of the story, violence wins, especially if it's vague and covered in fog. Fallout 4 is the game where you wake up from cryosleep, immediately lose your child, and then get so distracted by building potato-shaped bunkers and collecting fancy hats that you forget you were ever a parent. Bethesda handed you a post-apocalyptic wasteland and said, "Go nuts!" And we did, by hoarding toasters, talking to a British robot butler, and convincing a literal murder machine named Strong to like us. The main quest? Who cares? I'm out here modding my laser musket until it shoots dubstep. Fallout 4 deserved Game of the Year just for making me question whether it's better to save humanity or redecorate Sanctuary Hills for 40 hours straight. But nah, in 2015, The Witcher 3 came in like a shirtless fantasy Hemingway and stole the crown while Fallout was out here juggling radioactive crabs and moral ambiguity. Bethesda gave us bugs, sure, but also endless freedom, Boston accents, and a dog that was somehow better at surviving the apocalypse than half the NPCs. That's art. Inside is a game where you play a small child who never speaks, never smiles, and casually sprints through a dystopia full of corpse puppets, brain slugs, and government science labs that are definitely not FDA approved. The game never tells you what's going on, and yet somehow you understand everything, and by the end, you're piloting a flesh blob made of discarded gym memberships and probably existential dread. It's a side-scrolling fever dream with puzzle mechanics so elegant they make IKEA instructions cry. The atmosphere, pure bleak poetry. The soundtrack, more tension than your uncle's political Facebook posts. But Game of the Year 2016? Nope. That went to Overwatch because apparently multiplayer yelling is more prestigious than becoming one with a meatball of sadness. Inside is proof that you don't need guns, dialogue, or even color to make something unforgettable. Just give people emotional trauma and puzzles involving crates. It deserved awards. It got therapy bills. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is the Pixar film that decided to become a playable third-person shooter with more particle effects than a fireworks factory inside a glitter mine. This game's loading screens are shorter than my attention span, and the weapons? We're talking about pixelizers, mushroom sidekicks, and something that turns enemies into topiaries, because why not? Rift Apart plays smoother than jazz in a silk bathrobe, and somehow managed to make me emotionally invested in a cat with a wrench and a robot who's basically Siri with trauma. And Rivet? She's got more personality and one-ear twitch than most AAA protagonists have in 30 hours of monologuing. But when it came time for Game of the Year 2021, It Takes Two pulled the rug out by turning marriage counseling into a platformer. Cool, I guess. Meanwhile, Rift Apart was out here stitching entire dimensions together like a quantum tailor with daddy issues. If vibrant, heartfelt, interdimensional chaos isn't Game of the Year material, then nothing is. Bayonetta 2 is the game where a 7-foot-tall witch with librarian glasses uses her own hair to summon dragons while performing triple cartwheels and stilettos that double as handguns. Every boss fight feels like a fashion-forward fever dream written by someone who mainlines espresso and combat design. There's no time to ask questions, only time to dodge at the last second and make the whole world explode in slow-mo sparkles. You fight angels, demons, sentient orchestras, probably a confused weather god at some point, and somehow it all makes sense if you stop thinking completely. Bayonetta 2 should have been Game of the Year in 2014 for being the most unapologetically fabulous murder simulator in history, but it got snubbed, mostly because it was stuck on the Wii U, which is the console equivalent of being locked in a janitor's closet. Dragon Age Inquisition 1 instead. Cool story, bro, but can your mage do backflips in latex while dropkicking heaven? Didn't think so.
The struggle caused the Trinity of realities to be split into three realms: light, darkness, and chaos. Obviously, our world was the one born from chaos. The three worlds all needed rulers. Most of all, ours. And the one that ruled the
Deathloop is what happens when Dishonored drinks too much coffee, watches Tenet on repeat, and decides murder is a valid way to understand quantum physics. You're Colt, a man trapped in a time loop with 8 targets to kill, 1 gun that talks too much, and an arch nemesis who roasts you like it's open mic night every 15 minutes. Every day resets, but your pettiness doesn't. You learn patterns, crack codes, get better gear, and then die in hilarious ways because you forgot which hallway had the exploding turret disguised as a Roomba. Deathloop is sleek, stylish, and deeply confusing in the best possible way, like a Bond movie written by Christopher Nolan's evil twin. But Game of the Year 2021? Nope. It Takes Two stole that one too. Again, I love co-op emotional healing as much as the next guy, but Deathloop had time-traveling beef, jazz-infused murder puzzles, and a style so smooth it made me want to wear turtlenecks. That's worth a trophy, or at least a restraining order from time itself.
Colt! We found Colt! Hurry! Flanking maneuver!
Colt, you there?
Hello?
Kill those
Hello?
idiots yet? It's
It's
Juliana, in case you didn't remember.
Okay, look.
Stray is the only game that said, what if you were a cat in a robot apocalypse? And gamers everywhere collectively purred. You meow, knock things off shelves, and nap in sunbeams, all while solving humanity's collapse. It's like if Inside and Hello Kitty had a weird dystopian baby. And yet, behind the cute exterior is a full-on sci-fi tragedy where every vending machine hides an existential crisis. The cat doesn't talk, but you still feel more emotionally attached to it than most of your relatives. It should have won Game of the Year in 2022 just for giving us the option to press a dedicated meow button. But alas, Elden Ring stomped in with dragons, 400-hour side quests, and cryptic lore told by a guy stuck in a jar. Meanwhile, Stray was trying to save the world with whiskers and parkour. Honestly, if more cats had neon backpacks and robot sidekicks, the real world would be a better place. Instead, this feline masterpiece got treated like just another indie curiosity, and that's a war crime in my book. Alan Wake 2 is like being trapped inside your own sleep paralysis demon screenplay. It's stylish, terrifying, and so meta, it makes Inception look like a coloring book. The man writes horror stories that rewrite reality, but mostly he's just confused, cold, and mildly annoyed for 80% of the game. And then there's Saga, the FBI agent who walked into a Stephen King novel and decided she was going to fix it with bullets and sass. Between live-action cutscenes, jump scares that feel personally targeted, and the constant vibe of am I real or a metaphor, Alan Wake 2 was pure psychological chaos. And somehow, still snubbed. Game of the Year 2023? Nope. Baldur's Gate 3 got it because it lets you date a demon bear and roll dice for social anxiety. Alan just wanted to write a book and stop dying in the dark. But no trophy for Mr. Wake, just flashlight batteries and creeping dread. This man has been stuck in a haunted Word doc for 13 years. The least we could have done was give him a statue. Metal Gear Solid 5 is what happens when you give Kojima a military budget, 200 Red Bulls, and 0 adult supervision. This game lets you balloon goats into the sky, form bromances with a flamethrower guy, and command a private army built on anime-level loyalty and extremely questionable HR policies. Your big boss, a man so stoic he makes statues feel insecure, and you spend most of the game either crouch walking across Afghanistan or extracting enemy soldiers via skyhook like you're running a weird cult startup. The plot? Absolute bananas, clones, phantom limbs, parasites that hate language, and a sniper who breathes through her skin and only wears a bikini because of reasons. But it plays so good you forget you have no idea what's going on. The stealth is butter, the base building is addicting, the ending, an existential prank, and Game of the Year 2015, The Witcher 3 took it. Geralt got the trophy while Snake got betrayed by his own reflection. MGS5 deserved that award just for letting you sprint in slow motion while your horse poops dynamically. Red Dead Redemption 2 is not just a game, it's a cowboy simulator so detailed that your horse has testicle physics. Arthur Morgan is the only man who can die from tuberculosis and still make you want to do 10 more side quests before checking into the afterlife. You could spend an hour fishing, rob a train, bathe yourself, brush your horse, and still feel like you haven't scratched the surface. And the story? It hits harder than a bar fight in Valentine. The final act has more heartbreak than a country music playlist. But when it came time for Game of the Year 2018, it lost to God of War, which is a great game, sure. But Red Dead gave us an open world so immersive, you could get into arguments about animal pelt quality. Arthur wrote journal entries that were more poetic than most people's wedding vows. And for what? A polite round of applause and an existential crisis. Rockstar built a digital west so authentic you could smell the campfire beans, and still got wrote out of the awards show like a side character with no hat.
Still got a little fight in you, have you, boy?
Resident Evil out here doing the absolute most. First, they remade RE2 and suddenly Leon Kennedy went from awkward rookie to the most handsome man to ever dodge a zombie bite with shoulder rolls. Then Village gave us Lady Dimitrescu, a vampire giantess so powerful she made the internet collectively forget about taxes. And then the RE4 remake, perfect. They made a campy cult classic feel fresh again, gave Leon the charisma of a caffeinated action hero, and redefined how good third-person horror could feel. Capcom turned survival horror into an art form while keeping the camp at just the right level of cheese. But did any of these get a full-blown Game of the Year? Nope. They just get best sound design or, most times, Ethan loses a hand. If a man can take a chainsaw to the neck and still deliver one-liners, he deserves more than a round of applause. Resident Evil's been carrying the horror genre like it's a screaming child in a zombie apocalypse, and we just keep handing the award to elves with trauma.
Sorry, didn't realize that was yours.
I am flattered. I'm a one-lady type of guy.
All right, so whether they won or not, these games delivered unforgettable moments, broke boundaries, and stole our hearts. Game of the Year or not, they're GOAT in our eyes. Which one do you think was robbed the hardest? Drop your pick in the comments below, and don't forget to like, sub, and hit that bell so you don't miss more gaming deep dives.